Started now. Thank you everybody for dialing in today. And this webinar is on optimizing a warehouse. We're going to be introducing several smart warehouse technologies that won't break your bank. Next. So with me today, I'm Jeff Lim, your host, President of Portable Intelligence. I've got Peter Selisic, who is the VP of Sales in North America for Sewio, Tom Brennan, who's the President of Artemis Vision. And they're going to be speaking on their respective solutions and how it all ties into the smart warehouse. Next. So a bit about ourselves. Our company has successfully deployed our WMS solution to over 200 companies worldwide. I'm the CEO and founder of PI. I've spoken at a number of conferences, appeared regularly on a number of podcasts. I'm also author of a book, Your Warehouse is Not Your Fridge, How to Transform Your Warehouse into a Competitive Advantage. I have an MBA and also a professional designation in materials management. In my spare time, I volunteer as the Director of Education for the Material Handling Society of Ontario, and I serve on the steering committee of the local visual manufacturing ERP Canadian user group. Below are a couple of our validations for a number of hardware solutions that we work with, including Zebra and Honeywell. Those are the barcode scanning equipments. Next. Some of our customers by industry, they span the full gamut from food, packaging, right through to automotive and medical. The experience that we have across these industries allows us to leverage and really apply these technologies across multiple industries. For example, as you may know, in the automotive side of it, we've been very active in terms of helping them produce AIAG labels. And producing a label is not just about printing a label, but how to embed it into the actual process itself. And that experience has certainly helped us move that knowledge into the consumer goods industry, where they're busy creating SSCC 18 labels, as well as the food, where we're creating HACCP and traceability labels. So that experience across all these industries allowed us to really apply and lift all boats in terms of our knowledge and our expertise. Okay, next. As you may know, we have no shortage of disruptions today, which leads me as to why we built the smart warehouse. You see on the e-commerce, which is booming, there's major chip shortages around the world. There's disruptions in plastics and food and oil. There's shortages all over the place. Next. Down at the warehouse level, there's obviously a trickle-down effect. Employment levels are all-time high in warehouses. It's really hard to find labor these days. Amazon is on our hiring bitch and hiring people and creating a demand for warehouse workers. Also, there's not enough warehouses being built currently to accommodate the growth in e-commerce. So you've now got warehouses that are expected to actually stock more SKUs, stock more product, as well as accommodate e-commerce. So you've got the rise of hybrid warehouses supporting both bulk picks and e-commerce picks. And then inventory shortage itself is leading to crises and huge lead times. Inventory is now very much the new oil. If you have inventory on hand, you are literally the king. As a result, a lot of companies are rethinking their approaches to lean and just stock them as much as they can. And to add to this disruption, warehouses face an age-old problem. Next. And that's around the productivity gap. A lot of warehouses have barcoding and wireless. Those are predominantly the two types of technology used to manage inventory or product, right? But the big problem around wireless and barcoding is that they're great at managing products, but not at managing people. So as a result of that, you have this productivity gap. So we're on my left, worker A, tenured, worker B, the newbie or recently hired, which is not unusual these days, especially in warehouses that are experiencing dramatic demands. Worker A knows his way around the warehouse. Obviously, worker B doesn't know the way around the warehouse. And that's quite significant, whether you're in a 80,000 square foot warehouse or a million square foot warehouse. Worker A picks more efficiently because he's able to figure out his path. He's able to sequence his picks appropriately, whereas worker B does not. And eventually, as he's picking and building the pallet or loading the boxes, worker A does it much more efficiently and actually creates shipment-ready product. whereas a newbie who's building a pallet may need to have it redone at shipping or repackaged. As a result of that, the gap between worker A and B is quite significant, often as much as 50%. Next. So, which leads to why did we build SMART? Well, basically, as you know, warehouses need to do more with less, or about the same amount of labor or space. Warehouses, from my experience, don't have a strong track record of deploying new technologies. It's just so busy trying to get to the day. They don't have a lot of time to get into IT projects. As a result of that, those that do have a WMS or ERP are very reluctant to replace it. And they know it costs a lot of money to replace it. And speed to market. They don't have the luxury of time. Warehouses need to have a solution up and running in days or weeks, which is why we built SMART with all these criteria in mind. Next. So let's get into what the smart warehouse is. At the center of it is your ERP and WMS. So the key thing here to note is that we're leveraging data sets or data information that's already in your ERP or WMS. So now we've integrated our solutions into your particular ERP or WMS. And then the technologies we're bringing to bear is SuperScan, Vision Plus, RTLS, and TED. So let's talk a bit about each one of those. Next. So introducing SuperScan, which is developed by us, and basically it eliminates or reduces the scanning effort. Every barcode scan, as you may know, takes anywhere between 6 to 10 seconds. What we're trying to do is reduce the amount of barcoding effort by using either 1D or 2D, what we call summary barcodes that have the complete data set in there. And what SuperScan does is that when you scan a 2D barcode, for example, it'll literally fill the entire screen. So that way you're not entering in, say, 3 or 4 extra screens, you're only scanning once. The modules we've built to support SuperScan, or SuperScan is comprised of, is voice picking, PO receiving, and work order issuing. And again, it's integrated into our smart warehouse platform. Next. Our next technology is Vision Plus. We will be hearing from soon from Tom, developed by Artemis Vision, based out of Colorado. It's an industry-leading solution founded by Tom. It involves contactless scanning. You're capable of scanning 1D or 2D barcodes that's on a pallet. And we also perform multiple transactions at once. So for example, as a truck is being loaded into, or I should say as a pallet is being loaded into a truck, we'll scan basically a pallet and perform 2 transactions, both a pick and a ship. Next up is RTLS, which is developed by Sewio Networks based out of Czech. And you'll be hearing from Peter shortly about this industry-leading solution. It's also the foundation of our task management program, which is TED, which you'll be hearing about soon. And it again is integrated into our smart warehouse platform. And finally, introducing TED, which is developed by us, and it involves task management. And this is where we really address that discrepancy between your more tenured staff and your new staff. And basically, we're using location services to create and assign tasks to workers. We're tracking workers where they are in the facility. We also can analyze work schedules and also determine resource needs. So if you've scheduled a lot of picks to be done or orders to be shipped, we can tell you if you have enough resources that day. You may need to hire temp staff to support that. We also provide analytics around productivity and key metrics. And in Q4 of this year, we're going to be embedding artificial intelligence into it, which means we're going to be able to predict and analyze who your best workers are and who to give the work to. And again, it's part of our new smart warehouse platform. Next. So we're going to start off with a poll. DJ is going to run the poll, or I should say Mark will. What is your biggest concern regarding your warehouse? A, labor shortages. B, inventory accuracy. C, excess demand or supply constraints. D, warehouse capacity. Or E, all of the above. So we'll give you a few seconds to complete the poll, and then we'll share the results. Good. A lot of, yeah. Yeah, so we had 13% of our participants said labor shortages, 25% inventory accuracy, excess demand or supply constraints, not an issue. Warehouse capacity is 13, and all the above, over half of the people indicated that was a problem. Thank you, DJ. So let's get into our first speaker. Please meet Tom Brennan. He founded Artemis Solution in 2010. Artemis is named for the Greek goddess of the hunt for her acute vision. Tom graduated with computer science from Princeton. He leveraged his experience designing algorithms for self-driving cars into the factory floor. So he created next generation, more flexible algorithms, and also developed appropriate rigorous testing procedures so that it could make vision technology a reality in the real world. So over to you, Tom.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So just quickly about Artemis Vision. We've been around for 12 years. We've built numerous machine vision systems, largely custom factory systems, but we've been delivering a lot of these drive-through scanning Vision Plus warehouse systems, and that's becoming an increasing part of our business. We have a pretty broad customer base, including many Fortune 10 and Fortune 100 customers. So the advantages of Vision Plus, the biggest are that you can load trucks faster and you can reduce the number of errors. And so this is a rare technology that you can load trucks faster, obviously, just by driving every pallet into the truck, and you'd have a lot of errors. Or you could reduce errors by triple checking everything and you'd go very slowly. The core advantage of Vision Plus is that you can do something both faster and with less errors. You also get photo documentation of all your pallets. So if anybody brings up a damage claim or something like that, you have proof of the condition that it left your warehouse in. You can get some metrics on your different dock doors, how often they're used, how long it takes you to load trucks, track some of these things as KPIs that help improve your business. And finally, we offer a lot of simple integration paths. We understand that you can't have a month-long or 2-month-long project to get an IT system up and running in a warehouse. It's got to get up and running quickly. So looking at the speed angle, right? The speed angle is generally pretty obvious in terms of why we want to go faster. And if we can load that truck more quickly, we do not have to have that driver wait. We don't have to tie up that dock door. Many trucking companies will charge you for detention time if it takes longer than 2 hours to load a truck. At the end of the day, we have to get a certain number of trucks loaded and shipped out of our warehouse to meet our KPIs and accomplish our goals. Now, the problem is that if we try to go, as fast as we may need to go, we end up making errors. We ship out things that we shouldn't, and the advantage of Vision Plus is that it lets you get this speed without sacrificing that accuracy. So if we go to the next slide here, the advantage of improving your accuracy is a little more hidden, right? There's obviously the direct, I was a pallet short, maybe I put 25 pallets on the truck and there should have been 26, and now I get an OTIF fine for missing that pallet. But there's a lot of other hidden penalties to being inaccurate. So if you try to run everything really fast without the right scanning technology, what you're going to end up with is inaccurate inventory. So you don't have a true count of what's in the warehouse. So you're going to end up ordering more things and having more inventory that you're carrying. Then you have capital tied up in inventory, and you've got to rent a larger facility. You've got to travel further with the forklift to go make each pick, and you need more forklift drivers to do that. So the goal of going to Vision Plus is that with the right technology, you can get better tracking and the increased speed. So next slide. So as you see here, we have the cycle that we're describing, right? Where we try to improve scanning, we try to get more accurate, we triple check everything, we slow down, and somebody says, well, we got to get a certain number of trucks out per day or per week, and they're right. So we try to improve speed, right? We say, okay, let's go faster. Let's not triple check everything. We'll just do one quick check at the dock door. And then we end up in a situation where now we have that inaccurate inventory, and we spend more time reconciling our inventory, trying to find things that the WMS says are there, but that when you go to the actual pallet rack, there's nothing there, and we waste a lot of time. So we see customers go round and round in this cycle, and the way to really break free of it is to invest in better technology like Vision Plus. So if you're currently using handhelds, which many of our customers are, there's a pretty simple path to upgrade to Vision Plus. You basically you're going to replace those handhelds and scanning at the dock door with these systems that scan at the dock door by being mounted and scanning while you're in motion. If you're currently an RFID operation, right now you are either doing a separate operation to apply those tags, or minimally, if they're embedded in the label, you're spending a lot of extra money on tags. So just taking a simple 10 truck a day, 26 pallet a truck type operation, you're spending more than Vision Plus costs a year just in tags. Next slide. So the assembled system, you see here, it's a small footprint, sits right by that dock door. It's out of the way of the driver. You don't have to install anything bulky, right next to the door or that protrudes way out into the warehouse space. Next slide. We support two configuration types. One is a drive-through, where we point out and scan a front-facing license plate barcode. This is preferred for increased speed, but not necessary. You also have more flexibility in terms of the scan distance. We also can support a drive-by configuration where the unit's on the side, and then you scan barcodes on the side of the pallet. Either will work, and it's not necessarily the most critical thing which plane your barcode is on. Next slide. There's a variety of communication interfaces we support. You can run this locally. You can run this in the cloud via REST API. There's a lot of different ways to integrate the Vision Plus system. Next slide. So here we have two videos of the system in action. The first that's playing now, you basically just see how compact it is and easy to install. So it's essentially, you can bolt it right to the wall, screw it on, and it'll scan any barcode that goes through that door and give you basically red light, green light feedback. So we like to say that if your forklift driver can drive to work, they can use Vision Plus. Obviously, if they can't drive to work, if they run all the red lights, then they can't use Vision Plus, but that's a bigger problem. Here you'll see another customer facility. The guy's driving by, he gets the green light, drives the pallet into the truck. So that's how simple it is. You can basically just drive right onto the truck and observe the red light or green light that you're going to get and know that this either belongs on that truck or it does not. Transitioning to a poll question here, we have what steps have you taken to lower costs in your facility? And the options we have here are reduced workforce, reduced space, technologies and automation, other, or if you've taken no steps to lower costs. We'll let you go ahead and answer the question here, and I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff to introduce Peter.
Good. We'll just let folks respond and we'll see what the results are. Good. So the majority is added technologies and automation. 20% have reduced workforce. Some have reduced space. 10% other, and 10% is status quo. Thank you, Tom. That was great. And we'll now get to Peter. Selachek. So Peter has a degree in electrical engineering, wireless communications. His thesis is around combining GPS with ultra wideband technologies for indoor and outdoor positioning. He worked with Sewio on the thesis, and I guess the thesis was so good they hired him straight out of college, where he's been there full time since 2015. His experience includes working on large projects in warehousing and manufacturing for large suppliers and OEMs in Europe and North America. And I'm pleased to also say we'll be working with Peter very shortly on a big automotive project here in Canada. So over to you, Peter. Thank you for joining us today once again.
Thank you as well, Jeff, and thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me do a quick introduction about Sewio, the company that I represent, and then let's look into some of the use cases that you can do with the technology that we provide together with Portable Intelligence. So Sewio as a company focuses on delivering ultra-precise positioning solutions with a technology called ultra-wideband. Some of you may be familiar with the technology. For instance, Apple has been using it in their phones since 2019 to track their Apple AirTags, or Samsung is using the technology as well. And we've been using the technology since 2014 with pure focus on warehousing and manufacturing. Next slide, please. Here you can see kind of a snapshot of some of the partners and customers that we work with. Historically, we've worked primarily in automotive for tier suppliers and OEM, but since then we've kind of expanded into general manufacturing and warehousing, I would say. Next slide, please. There are three key areas where you can use our location tracking technology. First one would be for asset tracking, we call it. So asset tracking can be, tracking anything from like a pallet to a tote to an individual box on the shop floor. Another one would be fleet tracking. So this is predominantly for tracking where your forklifts are in a warehouse. And the reason is, and this is primarily the one that we will explore today, the reason is to either optimize fleet or verify picking locations, or to also enhance safety in the warehouse. And the third one is employee tracking. So this is predominantly for safety. By knowing where all your employees are, you can use that kind of data to trigger some safety alerts in the warehouse, or you can also verify if they're at the right spot during an emergency, for instance. The key aspect of the technology is that we can track every one of these objects or items with a 30 centimeter or 1 foot level accuracy, which makes it extremely accurate. There are three key pillars to the technology. There are two pieces of hardware. First one is called a tag. So this is similar to your label or RFID tag. The only difference is that it has a battery inside. So you can put this on a forklift or on a pallet or whatever you need to track. Then we have so-called anchors. So this is similar to your RFID gates or Wi-Fi access points. It's something that we put in the warehouse, and we create this kind of a canopy of anchors, and then we're able to track anything we put a tag on. And then we have a software with an open API, so the system can be easily integrated into your MES or WMS systems. Here on the slide, you can see kind of a generic architecture of how the system is deployed in a manufacturing facility or a warehouse. So you can see that we can create this canopy of ultra-wideband anchors. They are interconnected together through wired infrastructure to the system, where we have our software, which is operating, which is the main brain behind the system that's calculating XY for every individual item that you have tagged on the shop floor. And as mentioned, this can be then integrated directly into your WMS or MES systems. Now let's take a look at three use cases that I've picked that I typically see in warehouses. And the first one, and I think the most common one, was using our technology for automating inventory and for picking verification. So on the slide here, if we'll start playing this animation, here you can see that thanks to our precise tracking and thanks to using geofences in the system, you can know very precisely where all your assets are on the shop floor. And because we can track the asset with 1 foot level of accuracy, this kind of granularity can be very, very high, up to a single pallet location. If we'll go to the next slide, you can see that we can achieve this by placing our RTLS tag on the material handling unit, for instance, that is carrying the items around. And then on the next slide, you can see how granular we can get with the tracking. So here on this is a layout from one of the warehouses where the technology is deployed. And you can see with marking C14, C15, and so on, these are individual pallet locations. And the blue marker that you can see moving around on this map, this is an actual forklift. So you can see that we can be extremely granular and to really determine if the forklift is picking, loading, or unloading pallets at the given pallet location. So each individual rectangle that you can see here on the map is an individual pallet. So this is how accurate we can get within a live warehouse environment. You can use this to not only do so-called 2D asset tracking, so we can tell you where you left it in kind of a 2D space, also outdoors and indoors as well, but we can also use it for 3D. So we can also tell you how high the individual item has been stacked, and we can use this to verify basically picking locations. The next kind of a big area in terms of warehousing is definitely fleet analytics. On the next slide, you will see one of examples what kind of data can our system provide. So typically, when you have a large fleet, what you're mostly interested are congestions, how each individual forklift is being used, how your space is utilized. And, thanks to the system, you can generate very valuable statistics such as heat maps, spaghetti diagrams, run times, stop times, and so on and so on. So here on these few slides, you will see some examples. Yeah, on the next slide, you will see an example from a facility where we're generating heat maps, which tell you what are the most congested parts in the warehouse. It can also tell you, for instance, if a vehicle has stopped for more than X amount of minutes or hours. So for instance, that maximum break is like 30 minutes or like 1 hour. So thanks to tracking the location, we can know exactly if a forklift has stopped for a longer period of time, for instance. On the next slide, you can also see a so-called OEE report. So the system can also measure how each individual forklift is being used throughout the day or throughout the shift. So it can tell you the total stop time, the utilization, the total mileage. And, thanks to this data, you may, for instance, reconsider the size of your fleet. So the one specific customer who's generated this report was able to lower the leasing contracts on his forklifts by 15%, which generated a huge return on investment for him within the first year of the project. And if we'll go to the next slide, you can also see that you can also measure really detailed metrics based on given areas. So you can also divide your warehouse into several virtual areas, and you can compare and measure each individual areas and time spent for the given forklift. So for instance, that for this given forklift, majority of its time should be spent in this warehousing space. And you can, use these kinds of dashboard to double check plan versus reality, because often what we see is that the plan may be very well crafted by the management, but the question is if the operators are actually following the plan. And what we typically see within deployments at customer sites within the first few weeks is that, typically there's a big discrepancy between what is, planned by the management and what is actually happening on the shop floor. So this kind of technology can give you really good clarity on that. And the last use case that I would like to show you today, definitely also very important for our warehousing spaces where you have lots of moving parts, is safety. Safety works in our system in a way that if we know where every individual forklift or where every worker is, we can prevent accidents. Since our system is based on infrastructure, it works very well with obstacles. So even if you have high amounts of racking or shelving, you can be assured that our anchors will still pick up the signal okay, and it will work very well, unlike some other signaling technologies that simply measure signals between two devices. And if those two devices don't see each other, just like shown on the picture on the left side, the signal may not be read correctly. But because our anchors are picking up the signal, we can always get a good read no matter what. So as you'll see on the next slide, if you have an open area, non-infrastructure based system may work very well for you. But since you enter racking or you go behind the corner, you need that, God's eye view, God's eye perspective, I would say, from the anchors to be able to tell you that, hey, there's an operator right around the corner. You should slow down or just slow the forklift down directly. Since we can track everything so accurately, we can create so-called dynamic geofences around the object. So we can draw like a circle around a person and around a forklift, or two people as well. And as they come too close to each other, this can trigger an action. So as I mentioned just now, we can either slow down a forklift or put it into an e-stop, or we can also alert the operator or the pedestrian by audio or a visual alert that there is a forklift coming around the corner, and a similar warning can be sent to the operator to his forklift terminal. Also, we can do so-called slowdown zones. So we can, designate some area in the warehouse where the forklift needs to slow down automatically as it enters it. And again, because we have very granular tracking of where the forklift is going, it will automatically slow the forklift down as it enters a given slowdown area. And the best part about the technology is that all of these use cases can be used with the same infrastructure of anchors. So if you'll be interested into implementing this technology, the great news for you is that you deploy these so-called canopy of anchors once, and then you can build additional use cases as you go. For instance, I can mention one of our good customers in North America, which is Denso, North America, which started off with an application for tugger tracking, but since they've expanded into safety and other applications as well. So they're able to reuse the hardware that they've already put in place. So you don't have to worry that once you deploy such a technology, you would be stuck with just one kind of use case for eternity, but you can very easily expand into additional applications, all the way from safety to automatic inventory and management. And yeah, that's it from my side for today. And thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Or sorry, say thank you, Peter, for that
No worries.
illuminating presentation. And Tom, if you can join us again, we're going to take some questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, please enter it in your chat box. We have one question here that I'll get to. And for Tom, can Vision Plus scan barcodes on pallets if the barcodes are on different sides?
Yes, it can. The only thing we need is the barcode needs to face outwards. It can't face the driver. So if you only label on the driver's side, that could be an issue. But in general, it's a good idea to label multiple sides of a pallet, just so that if the label does get damaged, you don't lose track of the pallet. So yes, short answer, it can read barcodes on multiple sides of the pallet.
Right. And how does Vision Plus compare with RFID? I mean, we get asked this a lot where people are considering to use RFID on pallets and track that as it gets loaded into a trailer.
Yeah, there's a few differences. I mean, one is cost. The RFID tags are going to be significantly more expensive than labels. The other, with this type of system, you get pictures and everything, so you have photo documentation for any damage claims. And we also find for customers, RFID can be very difficult to debug. People put tags on things, and all the tags have to go perfectly on everything, and that has to always be the case, because otherwise you get these, well, I scanned this, but that showed up, and people realize that, oh wait, the tag, was that tag really on this one or that one? And you can't see it. So it can become very difficult to debug an RFID system. Somebody can easily walk up to a pallet and see that there are two different labels on the pallet, and that's wrong. But if you put two different RFID tags on the pallet and they're embedded in, packaging or not, visible to the outside, somebody's not necessarily going to notice that. So it can be more difficult to debug what's really going on with an RFID system and spend a lot of time.
Right. And if there are multiple barcodes on a single pallet, can Vision Plus identify the right one? That's another question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it can. We have a built-in set of filtering rules that you can set up so that, let's say you want to look at, I don't know, 16-digit code 128s that start with 01. We can only give you those barcodes, or we can only give you data matrices that are 20 digits long, or whatever rule you want to apply. So there's a regular expression filtering built into Vision Plus.
Great. Good. And for Peter, the question I have for you is, how does RTLS or how does your technology compare with using RFID, which we know is out there as well, used to support location tracking?
Yes, so I believe Tom has partially answered that question already himself. With RFID, there are certain limitations to readings and also to cost per tag for reading applications. For real-time tracking, you still are, let's say, stuck with the fact that you have to manually scan an item. I would say that's the number one issue, because if you want, to have that kind of automatic inventory, you're still relying on a Peter, I bought this very expensive MES from one of the leading MES providers here, and I'm still relying on scans from some of my operators. And if they forget to do it, or they scan the wrong one, I don't have any way of knowing that. So that's a big bottleneck right there. And another one I would say is that RFID gives you the ability, if you have mounted, let's say, RFID gates throughout your shop floor, it only is able to record the position of where it does the scan. So you don't have such a granular tracking everywhere across the warehouse. On the other hand, there may be, scenarios where we can potentially integrate with RFID readers as well to extend if, somebody's already using RFID in their plan. So it may not be a good idea to completely rip it off and replace. So yeah, I would say those are some of the main drawbacks, but yeah, we always like to look at every customer individually and try and find the right solution for him.
We have another question asking regarding RTLS system. So what's the coverage area that's going to be covered by the anchors and the RTLS system?
Great question. So you can cover anything from, let's say, 5,000 square feet all the way to, there's no limitation basically. If you want to, what we typically, do with customers is that we start in a smaller part of the warehouse as a pilot area where we, pilot the technology, show how it works, and then we just add more devices to cover more space. So we can cover the whole shop floor or whole warehouse or just some certain key areas for the pilot. It's highly granular and, it's really based on the specific use case that we're trying to solve.
Yeah. So I guess specifically, Peter, if somebody had a, say, 50,000 square foot warehouse, approximately how many anchors are they looking, would they need to cover the facility?
Yeah, for 50,000 square feet, I would estimate 25 to 30 anchors, something like that.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, good. And the anchors, in terms of what do they need to operate? Like, they run on battery, they need power. What's typically the connection for them?
Yeah, so typically we leverage the customer's already existing PoE network. So we can, we just tap into the already existing switches and PoE network that's on the shop floor, and we just create a separate VLAN for our network. We also transmit at 6.5 gigahertz, so there is no interference. If you already have, some systems in place like RFID or Wi-Fi or some other radio systems, you don't have to worry about any sort of interference, thanks to us using a completely different frequency band.
Right. Okay. And a question for both you guys is that, what does a typical deployment time frame look like? I mean, Tom, if somebody had, 4 or 5 doctors that they want to cover, what are we looking at time-wise to set up a deployment?
A typical door is under an hour. It's a matter of 2 anchor bolts and mounting it up and focusing aiming the camera where you want to drive, and then focusing and driving pallet.
Yeah, and that includes tuning of the cameras to read the barcodes and training the system, so to speak, to look for certain types of barcodes.
Yeah, so we have an auto configure for the lens now on our Gen 4 system. So it's basically put the palette in front of the camera, point the camera at the palette, hit auto configure, it tunes the focus and aperture for you. And then, you would type in whatever rule you had as a regular expression. So, that might take, a few minutes, or, it could take a little bit to debug what that regular expression needs to be. But there's a lot of tools. You can just Google how to build a regular expression based on parameters, and Google will spit you back the answer. So that
Sure.
can be good.
Good. And additionally, who should get involved in helping that deployment? I mean, we're talking facilities, IT, who typically needs to help out?
Yeah, normally having both facilities and IT involved helps because you're going to want IT to be able to support the integration to the WMS, and you're going to want the facilities team to be able to do just basic maintenance as needed on a system and just be familiar with it. If they're not, then it becomes something that somebody from IT has to come every time. You might want to point the camera at a different location or just make some minor change.
Great. Okay. Peter, what does a deployment look like on your side?
Yeah, if we'll take an example of the warehouse that you mentioned, let's say 50,000 square feet. If you have all the electrical work done, that is typically done by the local contractors. If you come on site, you would see us together with Portable. I can see deployment being done anywhere between 3 to 5 man days, basically. Okay, so very easy to deploy.
Yeah, and our site, speaking from a portable intelligence site, what we look to do is capture specific types of data in order to support the integration. So in the case of Vision Plus, what we'd be looking for is the orders that you're planning to ship that day. And if they're scheduled by door, that's ideal, is that we would then basically track the orders as they go through that door using the camera system to validate that the orders are going out the right door. And for a lot of customers, what it also does is it saves on obviously missed shipments and fines that may occur from shipping the wrong pallet or shipping the wrong product to the customer, right? And certainly on the Sewio side, the location tracking side, as you know, there's several other use cases that Peter went through. He talked about 3 of them. Very simple one would be just simply tracking where people are and ensuring that basically you're getting the most out of your equipment from whether it be a safety perspective or usage perspective. Further down, we can get into things like task management around who to give the task to. So instead of having the workers decide who does what and when based on a wide area, in this case say 50,000 square feet or even 1 million square feet, we could break down the work at the task level. So instead of having one worker pick the sales order or the customer order, you would have a group of people picking that order, almost like a wave pick, and then we would help consolidate it. But the idea is that we would spread out those tasks amongst all those workers that are available according to the location technology. So that's how we work. So before we wrap up, if you guys can share maybe an anecdote or two about some surprises or some benefits that some of your deployments have as a result in that was a little unexpected that you alluded to one at Denso, Peter, but if you can elaborate on something that you've seen on your side that was this is a nice surprise too.
Yes, for me personally, it's very often very surprising coming to some shop floors and warehouses, even in aerospace and so on. I'm a electrical engineer, so I'm not really a process person, but it's surprising sometimes to see people holding on to processes that are several decades still the same. What really surprised me though, now that you're mentioning Denso, for instance, is that when they were already a customer, but they came over, to ask if we can help with one of their projects where they have automatic guided vehicles in one part of the area, and then they have manually operated very narrow aisle vehicles. Those are the ones that only operate in these very narrow aisles. And they had an issue of when the VNA is going out of the aisle, it has, these long forks coming out. And some of the AGVs were basically impaled on the forks because even though the automated guided vehicle has a laser sensor that is able to detect foreign objects, it couldn't detect the forks when it's down. So they came to us if that's something that we could solve for them because, an automatic guided vehicle, you're typically looking at like 50K plus per piece. So it's a very expensive accident. So that was definitely a first one. And I'm personally still learning about, the new potential use cases that we can solve for customers every day. And so that would be my favorite one, I would say.
Cool. So you put a tag on the AGV and then that became visible through the Sewio network, I
Yes.
presume.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then
exactly. Then
they're
it's
the
easy
driver.
then it's easy to do that. But yeah, if you don't have any way to control that, you have to rely on the operator to see. But if the the forks are quite long, then the operator may not see behind the corner that there's an AGV coming. So it's a safety hazard for sure.
Right. Good. Tom, do you have any antidotes you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, on a similar vein, I didn't really talk about safety in my portion, but this eliminates the need to get off the forklift to scan the pallet manually, which is a safety concern because you have somebody getting off on and off many times a day, and you have people now, walking around in an environment where there are forklifts. And as a something that improves safety, it's also popular with the forklift drivers. They don't like to get off the forklift. They would rather just drive the forklift around. So it's one of the few, typically you talk about, oh, we're going to put in this new technology, and everybody's like, yeah, good luck. I don't want to deal with that. This is actually something the forklift drivers like, which has surprised me everywhere we've put it in, because as soon as you tell them, yeah, you don't have to get off the forklift anymore, just drive on the truck, they're like, wow, that's a little perk. And if you want to talk about retaining workers in the current environment, investing in things that make their lives a little easier and make working there a little better, it can justify itself on that ground as well.
Great, good. So yeah, we had a question around cost, but we'll reach out to that individual and make sure we get all the details before providing a quote or an approximate cost to that individual. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for participating, for joining in on this webinar. Thank you to Tom and Peter for their great presentations. And the last thing we'll do is this quick poll question is, out of the technologies you saw today, which are you most interested in?
Can we vote as well, Jeff, or?
No,
you cannot vote, sorry.
Okay.
Well, Peter, I'm interested in RTLS. Come on.
Yeah, I know. So
actually, to be honest, I wanted to say that I think both technologies can work very well in one warehouse, because Tom will take care of your outbound while we will take care of the indoor operations. So I honestly think that a combination of both can be like a huge benefit for a warehouse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you again today, and we'll reach out to the individual who asked for approximate costs so we can get the details on what he wants to track. So here's our contact information for myself, for Peter, for Tom. Feel free to reach out to them or reach out to us, and we'll certainly be here to answer any questions you may have. And thank you again, gentlemen, for everything. And we look forward to chatting again.